Kids are full of curiosity, eager to explore and preparing for that leap into adulthood. Being curious is normal and often a good thing. It's how we learn about ourselves and the world. But what happens when someone's dangerous curiosity and drive go horribly wrong, leading not just to a mistake, but to real tragedy again and again? In this case, we're looking at a story where a young person's actions went far beyond the typical bounds of youthful mischief or exploration. This is the story of Maria Ouchi, a teenager who was ultimately prosecuted as an adult for a crime committed at an age when society might still think of her as a child. In December 2014, the Nagoya City Chikusa police station received a missing person report for 77-year-old Tomoko Mori. Her husband reported her missing after she disappeared while out sharing her faith in Chikusa ward, as she often did as a devout Jehovah's Witness. For over a month, Tomoko's whereabouts remained a mystery. During their investigation, police zeroed in on a name, Maria Ouchi, a young girl who had been seen with Tomoko before her disappearance. At first, the police had a hard time believing Maria could be involved. After all, she was just a student. But as they dug deeper, the evidence kept pointing back to her. When police eventually reached out to Maria and her parents, they learned she'd been living with her parents in a different city for about a month. On January 26, 2015, Maria returned to Nagoya and voluntarily went to the police station for questioning. She led the officers to her apartment, where they made a shocking discovery. In the bathroom, they found Tomoko's body, fully dressed with a scarf wrapped around her neck, lying on the floor with dried blood around her. Tomoko had multiple injuries, likely from a sharp object. Maria was immediately arrested. So who was this young girl at the center of such a shocking crime? Maria was born in Sendai in 1995 and was the oldest of two daughters. Her father, once an agricultural researcher, had switched to managing an apartment complex, but Maria's relationship with him was tense. She later claimed he was controlling, and this tension seemed to have had a big impact on her. Maria's mother used to work as a store clerk, but left her job after the incident, finding it too hard to go out in public. Maria's behavior started to change in some noticeable ways around 5th grade. In Japan, family terms hold a lot of meaning, and how you address your parents reflects your relationship with them. Young kids usually call their mom mama and dad papa, terms that show respect and warmth. But Maria decided to stop calling her mother mama and began using her first name instead, something that might seem small but can feel like a big deal in Japan. She also stopped calling her father papa and switched to oyaji, a term that's more masculine and rough, often used by boys or young men. Oyaji doesn't have the same warmth. It can feel distant or even a bit disrespectful, depending on how it's used. On top of that, Maria started referring to herself in a way that was pretty unusual for a young girl. She used ore, a casual masculine word for I, usually used by men, and sometimes even ore-sama. In Japanese, adding sama is a way to elevate oneself, and it can come across as arrogant, almost like calling yourself the great me. Her mother noticed these changes and tried to talk to Maria about them, but Maria didn't listen. When Maria Ouchi was in 2nd grade, her mother discovered she had stolen some stationery. Maria shrugged it off, claiming everyone else was doing it, and she just went along. This early incident hinted at her struggle to distinguish right from wrong. According to people who knew her, she was a bit unusual but well-liked, cheerful, and surrounded by friends. Yet, some say that this bubbly side of her was only skin deep. Beneath the surface, Maria seemed to have a strange fascination with murder and pranks that went beyond typical teenage curiosity. Later in 6th grade, Maria attempted a more sinister prank. She planned to add boric acid, a toxic substance used in insecticides, to her male teacher's lunch. Her plan fell through when a friend lost the substance, so instead, she settled for slipping staples and eraser shavings into his meal. The prank caused a lot of drama, as you can imagine, and marked the beginning of her troublemaking reputation. By middle school, Maria's interest took an even darker turn. She became infatuated with Shinichiro Azuma, the criminal responsible for the notorious Sakakibara incident, a chilling case involving a young boy's murder, marveling at his ability to commit such horrific acts at her age. She even started buying survival knives online, a habit that alarmed those around her. She confided in her sister about these dark thoughts, but her sister, terrified by Maria's threats and her habit of brandishing weapons like axes and knives, stayed silent. When Maria moved on to high school at St. Ursula Academy Eichi High School, her choices continued to set her apart. Instead of embracing typical feminine styles, she cut her hair short and wore a kakuran, the traditional boys' school uniform. Despite her unique style and behavior, she was popular and friendly, described as a smart, sporty, and charismatic student who was well regarded by her classmates. After high school, Maria got into the prestigious Nagoya University's Faculty of Science. Living on her own, she joined the cheer squad and piano club, immersing herself in college life. According to her mother, before moving from Sendai to Nagoya, Maria bragged that now in college she could buy drugs openly and considered it a natural interest since she was in the science department. Her mother's concern didn't seem to hold Maria back. So let's fast forward back to the murder investigation. After her arrest for the murder of Tomoko Mori, Maria was questioned extensively. What started as an inquiry into Tomoko's murder soon unraveled into something much more shocking. During the questioning, Maria confessed to several crimes she had committed in the past, which became known as the Thallium incidents. It turned out that Maria's criminal activities dated back to her high school days. On May 27, 2012, while in her second year of high school, she lured a former classmate from junior high to a karaoke bar they used to visit together in Sendai. There, she slipped a dangerous chemical, thallium sulfate, into her friend's drink. This substance is highly toxic, and Maria used it without hesitation. Her friend immediately noticed something strange about the taste and spit it out, but the damage was done. She later experienced terrifying symptoms, including hair loss and numbness in her limbs. Doctors couldn't identify the cause at the time, so her suffering remained a mystery until Maria's confession during the questioning. There's more to Maria's story, and it only gets darker. After the initial thallium poisoning incident in May 2012, Maria didn't stop. From May to July of that same year, she continued slipping thallium sulfate into the drinks of her male classmates. By June, one of these boys fell seriously ill, and by October, he was hospitalized. People noticed Maria's strange behavior and her obsession with criminals, but her popularity and position in school protected her. She was well-liked, and her reputation gave her a kind of shield. No one could believe she might be behind what was happening. Sadly, the consequences for this boy was severe. He lost most of his eyesight, and his life was completely derailed. He was transferred to a special needs class. His future forever changed. In an interview, he reflected on how Maria's actions stole his sight and his once bright future. When the police finally uncovered these poisoning incidents, they charged Maria with the attempted murder of 2 classmates. Yet, when asked why she did it, she revealed a chilling reason. It wasn't about any personal grudge or anger toward them. She was simply fascinated by poison and wanted to try it out. But her dangerous curiosity didn't stop at poison. Maria was also charged with attempted arson. In 2014, the same year she murdered Tomoko, she experimented with Molotov cocktails, petrol bombs, which led to 2 different fire incidents. On August 29th to 30th, 2014, she allegedly broke into a house in Sendai City with a Molotov cocktail, but no one was charged because they couldn't link her to the attack, and there were no victims at the scene. A second incident took place on December 13th, 2014, just a week after Tomoko's murder. This time, Maria set fire to a house in Sendai City by pouring diethyl ether, a highly flammable chemical, into the mailbox and igniting it. Tragically, this fire led to the death of a 66-year-old woman. When questioned, Maria claimed she hadn't meant for this particular house to burn down, saying she'd mistaken it for someone else's. She wanted to witness a burned corpse, a desire that speaks volumes about her disturbed fascination. So let's dive into the day that revealed the full extent of Maria Ouchi's chilling actions, the day she took the life of 77-year-old Tomoko Mori. It was December 7th, 2014. Tomoko, a dedicated Jehovah's Witness, had attended a meeting where she met Maria, then 19 years old. The two talked briefly, and Maria expressed a strong interest in learning more about Tomoko's faith. Eager to share, Tomoko accepted Maria's invitation to her apartment that afternoon. But what should have been a warm visit turned into a nightmare. When they arrived at Maria's apartment, Tomoko didn't find a friendly setup of snacks or tea. Instead, Maria ambushed her, striking her head with an axe multiple times. When Tomoko was severely wounded, Maria strangled her with a scarf until she was sure she was dead. Afterward, she dragged Tomoko's body to the bathroom, laying her fully dressed on the floor with the scarf still around her neck. Maria even took 4 or 5 photos, referring to them later as records of the experiment result. That very day, Maria posted a chilling message on Twitter: "I finally did it." The next day, she left her apartment and Tomoko's body behind and returned to her parents' home in Sendai City. Maria's case took on a disturbing legal dimension. Despite her age, she was sentenced as an adult due to the severity and nature of her crimes. In mid-February 2015, she underwent a 3-month psychiatric evaluation. By May, after she had confessed to poisoning her classmates with thallium sulfate, she was rearrested. Her case moved through family court, and eventually she was sent back to the district attorney, facing 5 formal charges in October. At her first trial on January 16th, and then again in the second on the 19th, shocking details came to light. During the attack, Tomoko had asked Maria if she was going to kill her. Maria calmly replied yes. When Tomoko asked why Maria was doing this, Maria's answer was chillingly simple: "I just wanted to kill people." Even in court, Maria showed no remorse. When asked if she felt the urge to kill, she answered, "Yes, I even want to kill people now." She remarked that she liked seeing the judge, attorney, and prosecutor in neckties because she wanted to strangle them with those ties. She admitted that although she initially feared death, she gradually became drawn to it. When questioned by a psychiatrist, Maria pointed to her parents, particularly her mother, as a source of stress, blaming their absence for her behavior. By the time Maria was arrested, her name and face appeared in Weekly Shincho, a Japanese magazine, even though she was still a minor. Under Japanese law, juveniles under 20 are protected from having their identities revealed. But given the brutality of her crimes and her lack of remorse in court, authorities made an exception. Throughout her trial, Maria never expressed any regret. During one trial session, a former classmate came forward as a victim. He recounted how, during his second year of high school, Maria approached him with a strange powder on her hand, urging him to lick it. Soon after, he began experiencing hair loss, and his eyesight severely deteriorated. He was eventually hospitalized for 3 months. Though Maria eventually apologized, she later admitted it was only because she was told to, not out of genuine remorse. In court, Maria continued to claim that her only motivation was a desire to kill. Ultimately, on March 24, 2017, the Nagoya District Court sentenced her to life in prison. Maria and her legal team quickly appealed, arguing that her mental health issues, such as a lack of empathy, impulsivity, and possibly bipolar disorder, meant she wasn't in her right mind and should not be held responsible. The defense argued that Maria's eccentric and often violent actions, like her experiments with thallium to test immunity, showed long-standing mental disorders. But in the end, the appeal seemed like a tactic to shift public opinion, attempting to paint her as a victim of her own mind rather than a perpetrator. On March 23, 2018, the Nagoya High Court upheld the original judgment, dismissing the appeal from Maria and her lawyer. The judge made it clear that needing treatment didn't absolve her of guilt. Sparing her from a sentence just because she required medical care wasn't an option, especially in light of her calculated actions. Maria showed a disturbing awareness of her protections as a minor. Before killing Tomoko, she had boasted to her sister that, as a juvenile, the law would protect her. Afterward, she tried to destroy evidence and even mapped out escape routes online, planning to flee by bicycle. Her familiarity with chemicals was well known at her university. If she could grasp advanced chemistry concepts, it stood to reason she could control her violent behavior. The court found that she knew exactly what she was doing. She couldn't claim otherwise. After this dismissal, Maria's defense team appealed to the Supreme Court. But on October 15, 2019, the Supreme Court also dismissed her appeal. And by October 22nd, Maria's life sentence was finalized. The case felt like a disturbing roller coaster, shifting from a missing person investigation to the exposure of a series of crimes hidden under juvenile protection laws. The Japanese media's decision to reveal Maria's face and name broke the usual boundaries of juvenile protection and ignited fierce public debate. Many argued that if 18-year-olds can vote, a 19-year-old should be accountable for violent crimes. Others criticized the media, insisting that breaking the juvenile law to expose her identity still crossed legal lines. So, what's your take on this case? Should young offenders ever face adult-level punishment? And what really defines the boundary between adolescence and adulthood? And how should juvenile acts adapt in response to such cases? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and that is all for today. Thanks for watching.